The sound of crying children cut through the quiet Sunday afternoon in Central Park like a knife through silk. Hannah Montana paused her morning walk, her nursing instincts immediately alert. Two identical 7-year-old boys sat on a bench, tears streaming down their faces as a man in an expensive suit knelt helplessly before them. "Please, Woobin, Dong-hyun," the man begged in accented English, his voice charged with frustration and despair. "Tell Dad what's wrong." Hannah watched the scene unfold, her heart tightening. The boys were beautiful, Korean features with the most expressive dark eyes she had ever seen. But they were inconsolable, their little bodies trembling with sobs that seemed too deep for such small children. "We want to go to the fun place." The more outgoing twin, Woobin, she realized, lamented. "The place of the horses spins the line." "Amusement park," his quieter brother Dong-hyun whispered, immediately hiding behind Woobin as he noticed Hannah watching. The father ran his hands through his black hair, the designer watch catching the sunlight. Everything about him screamed wealth and power, from his perfectly fitted casual clothes to the way he carried himself. And there he was, completely defeated by two 7-year-olds who wanted something as simple as a day at an amusement park. Hannah knew she had to keep walking. She was between nursing contracts, trying to decide what the next step would be. She had her own problems, her own empty apartment waiting for her, her own uncertain future. Getting involved in a stranger's family drama was the last thing she needed. But when Woobin looked directly at her with those tear-filled eyes and whispered, "Are you an angel?" Something inside her chest shattered. "Hi," he said softly, slowly approaching. "What made you two so upset?" The man looked up, and Hannah felt her breath hold. He was devastatingly handsome, striking jaw, intense dark eyes, and an aura of controlled power that should have intimidated her. Instead, she saw exhaustion and vulnerability behind the expensive facade. "I'm sorry," he said, starting to stand up. "We don't want to bother—" "You're not bothering anyone," Hannah interrupted, kneeling at the boy's level. "Sometimes Dad needs help too, right?" Dong-hyun peered behind his brother, curiosity overcoming shyness. "You smell like flowers," he whispered. Hannah smiled. "This is my lotion. Lavender. It helps people feel calm." She looked between the twins. "Do you want to know a secret? When I was little and felt sad, my grandmother sang to me. He always made the pain go away." "Will you sing for us?" Woobin asked hopefully. Without hesitation, Hannah began humming a soft lullaby that her grandmother used to sing. The effect was immediate. The two boys stopped crying, their breathing becoming more regular as they listened. Even the father seemed to relax, his shoulders slumping as the tension left his body. "They just need a mother," Hannah whispered, not realizing that she had spoken aloud until she saw the man's eyes widen. "I'm Han Ji-hoon," he said quietly. "And you? You just did something I hadn't been able to do in months." "Hannah Montana," she replied, then noticed his surprised look. "Yes, like the singer. My parents had a sense of humor." "Hannah Angel," Woobin suddenly declared. "You are our angel." On the other side of the park, a man in a dark suit watched the interaction with professional interest. Kim Tae-sik had been protecting Han Ji-hoon for 8 years, but his services were gradually being reduced as his boss came out of the dangerous life. Still, old habits die hard, and Tae-sik couldn't help but notice how peaceful his employer seemed for the first time in years. This woman, whoever she was, had just become either the best thing that happened to the Han family or its greatest vulnerability. Weeks had passed since that first meeting in Central Park, and somehow Hannah had become a regular part of the Han family's routine. It started innocently, coinciding encounters during their morning runs, when Ji-hoon was taking the twins to the playground. "Hannah Angel," Woobin screamed whenever he saw her, running at high speed into her arms. Dong-hyun was more reserved, but silently slid his small hand into hers and whispered secrets that only she could hear. "My teacher said elephants never forget," he had told her yesterday. "I want to be like an elephant so I never forget you." The comment tightened her chest with an emotion she wasn't ready to name. "Can we go to the zoo today?" Woobin asked hopefully during one of the meetings in the park, pulling Hannah's hand. "We want to show you the elephants." Ji-hoon seemed uncertain. "I don't know if Hannah has time." "I'd love to," Hannah interrupted, startled. "I haven't been to the zoo in years." 2 hours later, they were standing in front of the elephant enclosure, watching a calf play with its mother. Dong-hyun pressed his face against the glass, mesmerized. "See?" he whispered to Hannah. "The elephant never leaves her calf. They are together forever." "That's right," Hannah said softly, her heart aching with the desire in his voice. "Elephant families are very special." "Like we could be," Woo Bin added quietly, sliding his hand into hers. Ji-hoon observed the interaction with an expression of admiration and fear. These moments were becoming more frequent, small glimpses of what a real family could look like, but he also knew how dangerous hope could be. Later that week, Hannah found herself in the most unexpected place, a supermarket with 2 7-year-olds. "We need to make a list," Dong-hyun announced seriously, pulling out a crumpled piece of paper. "Dad always forgets the important things." "Like what?" Hannah asked, amused. "Ice cream," Woo Bin said immediately. "And those cookies that look like fish. And, oh, the cereal with the tiger." As they walked through the halls, Hannah found herself naturally taking on a motherly role. She helped them reach items on the high shelves, steered them away from over-processed food, and listened patiently as they debated the merits of different breakfast cereals. "Hannah Angel," Dong-hyun said quietly as they stood in the checkout line. "Do you cook?" "A little. Why?" "Dad tries, but—" He grimaced that clearly indicated that his father's cooking skills were lacking. "Maybe I can teach you both how to do something simple," she offered. "Like pancakes?" The faces of the 2 boys lit up like Christmas morning. "Really?" Woo Bin jumped excitedly. "Can we make them in the form of animals?" "We can try," laughed Hannah. The following Saturday morning, they were in Ji-hoon's spotless kitchen, flour covering every surface and 3 people covered in dough. "I think the elephant looks more like a spot," Ji-hoon remarked, turning what should have been an elephant-shaped pancake. "It's abstract art, Dad," Dong-hyun said seriously, making Hannah burst into laughter. "Yes," Woo Bin agreed, "like in the museum you took us to. No one could tell what those paintings were either." Ji-hoon seemed to feign offended. "Know that this was a very expensive art exhibition." "Expensive doesn't mean good," Hannah teased, and she was rewarded with a smile that made her stomach turn. As they sat at the kitchen table eating their warped but delicious pancakes, Hannah felt something she hadn't experienced in years: the hot, chaotic joy of family breakfast. The twins chatted about school. Ji-hoon told horrible dad jokes, and for a moment she could almost forget that this wasn't really her life. "This is the best breakfast ever," Dong-hyun declared, syrup on his chin. "Better than the fancy restaurant Dad took us to last week," Woo Bin agreed. "Hey," Ji-hoon protested softly. "That was a 5-star establishment." "But there was no Hannah Angel," Dong-hyun said simply, and the room fell silent. Because that was the truth that neither of them wanted to admit. Everything was better with Hannah there. Now standing outside Ji-hoon's Manhattan penthouse later that week, Hannah wondered how her life had taken such an unexpected turn. The building screamed wealth, doormen in impeccable uniforms, marble lobbies, the kind of place she'd only seen in movies. "Are you sure about that?" Raven Johnson, her best friend and fellow nurse, asked from the passenger seat. "Girl, this man could be anyone. Rich doesn't always mean insurance." "He's a businessman," Hannah replied, though she had noticed that Ji-hoon was always vague about details. "Bitcoin investments or something, and you've seen how those boys shine next to me." "Mm-hmm," Raven muttered skeptically. "Just be careful. There's something strange about a man who needs a stranger to calm his children." Before Hannah could answer, the twins burst through the entrance of the building, their faces glowing with excitement. "Hannah Angel! Hannah Angel!" Woo Bin practically jumped when he got to the car. "Daddy said you're going to see our house." Dong-hyun stayed behind a little, but his smile was just as bright. "I've drawn a drawing for you," he whispered sheepishly. "It's at my bedroom door." Ji-hoon appeared behind them, and Hannah's breathing failed as it did every time she saw him. Today he wore dark jeans and a simple black sweater, but he still carried himself with that controlled power that made his pulse race. "Thank you for coming," he said, his accent making the simple words sound like poetry. "The boys can't stop talking about showing you their room." 20 minutes later, Hannah understood why the twins were so excited. Their penthouse was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, modern furnishings that probably cost more than their annual salary, and enough room for a small army. But it felt cold. Beautiful and expensive, but cold. "This is our toy room," Wu Bin announced, dragging her into a room full of every toy imaginable. "Dad buys us a lot of things, but we like to play with boxes more." "Boxes are more fun," Dong-hyun agreed solemnly. "You can turn them into anything." Hannah knelt down at their level. "What do you turn them on?" "Houses?" Wu Bin said immediately. "Houses where families live together, dine and watch movies." The innocent comment was a physical blow. These beautiful, rich children played house because they wanted exactly what their money could not buy, a complete family. "Do you want to see my room?" Dong-hyun asked softly, tugging at his hand. Her room was as perfectly decorated as the rest of the house, but what caught Hannah's attention was the design taped to the door. It showed 4 stick figures holding hands, a tall man, a curly-haired woman, and 2 small boys. Above them, in careful 7-year-old handwriting, were the words, "My family." "It's you," Dong-hyun pointed at the woman. "I made your hair curly as it really is." Hannah's throat tightened. "Honey, I'm not—" "You are," he interrupted with the absolute certainty that only children have. "You sing to us when we're sad. You make Daddy smile, that's what mums do." From the door, Ji-hoon watched the interaction with an expression that Hannah couldn't decipher. When their eyes met, something electric passed between them, an acknowledgement of the impossible situation they had stumbled into. "Are you hungry?" Ji-hoon asked, his voice hoarser than usual. "I thought we could order dinner." "Can we eat in the living room?" Wu Bin asked hopefully. "Like a picnic?" "Like a family," Dong-hyun added quietly. An hour later, they were sitting on the soft carpet, with Chinese pots of takeout scattered between them like an indoor picnic. The twins talked animatedly about school, their friends, their latest obsessions. Ji-hoon looked more relaxed than she had ever seen him, laughing at his children's stories, and, from time to time, meeting Hannah's gaze with a smile that made her stomach turn. "Hannah Angel," Wu Bin said suddenly, "are you going to be our mommy?" The question hung in the air like an electric wire. Hannah felt her cheeks burn as she looked at Ji-hoon, who looked equally astonished. "Wu Bin," Ji-hoon began, but his son wasn't done yet. "Because we asked Santa Claus for a mommy last Christmas, and he didn't bring it. But then you came, so maybe Santa was just late." "Too late," Dong-hyun agreed seriously. "But that's okay. Good things are worth the wait. Dad says that." Hannah's heart was beating so hard that she was sure everyone could hear. "Honey, it's not that simple." "Why?" Wu Bin interrupted with a 7-year-old logic. "You love us, don't you? And we love you, and Daddy likes you. I can tell why he smiles differently when you're here." "Different how?" Hannah found herself asking, unable to hold back the question. "Happy different," Dong-hyun explained. "Like when we lived with Mom, but better." The mention of the mother created an awkward silence. Ji-hoon briefly mentioned his ex-wife, who she dated when the boys were 4 years old and has not had contact since. But seeing the faces of the twins now, Hannah realized how much that abandonment still affected them. "Your mommy," Hannah began carefully. "She didn't want to be a mother anymore," Wu Bin said matter-of-factly. "She said we were too noisy and too laborious. But you don't think we're too much work, do you?" The question broke Hannah's heart. "Oh dears, no. You don't give much work. You are perfect just as you are." "See?" Wu Bin turned to his triumphant father. "She thinks we're perfect. That means she should definitely be our mommy." Ji-hoon cleared his throat. "Boys, being a family is more complicated than that. Hannah has her own life, her own job. But she could live here," Dong-hyun suggested hopefully. "We have a lot of space, and then she could sing to us every night when we have nightmares." "Do you have nightmares?" Hannah asked, worried. Both boys nodded solemnly. "Sometimes we dream that people leave and don't come back," Wu Bin explained. "Like Mommy did." The simple and painful phrase made Hannah want to take the 2 boys in her arms and promise that she would never leave. The intensity of her protective instincts frightened her when she became so attached to these children. "What if," Dong-hyun said slowly, "what if we showed Hannah Angel how good we are at being a family? So maybe she wants to stay." Before anyone could answer, the two boys jumped up and ran into the room. They returned moments later with a collection of stuffed animals, bears, elephants, a few dogs, and a lion. "This is our family of bears," Wu Bin announced, arranging the toys in a circle. "Daddy Bear, Mama Bear, and the two teddy bears." "But we don't have a mother bear," Dong Hyun said sadly. "So Daddy Bear has to do everything himself, and sometimes he gets very tired." They began to act out a little story with the stuffed animals, Daddy Bear trying to cook dinner while the teddy bears were crying, Daddy Bear trying to read bedtime stories while he slept, Daddy Bear looking sad and lonely after the babies went to sleep. "But then," said Wu Bin dramatically, "Mama Bear is back. She picked up a brown teddy bear and made it dance to the family, and Daddy Bear was no longer tired, and the teddy bears were not sad, and they all lived happily ever after." "As if we could," Dong Hyun added hopefully, looking directly at Hannah, "if you want to be our Mama Bear." The room was silent except for the soft sounds of the city beyond the windows. Hannah felt tears form in her eyes as she looked at those two beautiful boys who had somehow conquered a piece of her heart that she didn't even know existed. When she looked at Ji-hoon, she saw him watching her with an expression of longing that took her breath away. Not only desire, although that was also there, but something deeper, hope, despair, the look of a man who was drowning and suddenly saw a lifeguard. Hannah started but stopped, not knowing what she was going to say. The moment was interrupted by the two boys yawning at the same time, the previous excitement giving way to tiredness. "Time to sleep," Ji-hoon announced, although his voice was softer than usual. "Say good night to Hannah." "Will you sing for us?" Dong Hyun asked hopefully. "Just until we sleep." Hannah looked at Ji-hoon, who nodded. "If you don't mind." 20 minutes later, she was sitting between two small beds in the twins' shared room, humming the same lullaby she had sung that first day in the park. The two boys struggled with sleep, as if they feared she would disappear if they closed their eyes. "Hannah Angel," Wu Bin whispered in the darkness, "will you still be here in the morning?" The question hit her. I have to go home tonight, honey." "But will you come back?" Dong Hyun added quietly. "Promise you'll come back." Hannah felt Ji-hoon's presence at the door behind her, felt the weight of his attention like a physical touch. 3 pairs of eyes awaited his answer, 2 small and hopeful, 1 adult and cautious but equally desperate. "I promise I'll be back," she whispered, and she felt it more than anything in life. The two boys smiled and finally let sleep take them. Hannah sat for a few more minutes, watching their peaceful faces in the dim light of the hallway. When she finally got up to leave, she found Ji-hoon waiting for her in the living room, 2 glasses of wine in her hands. "Thank you," he said simply, offering him a glass. "I haven't seen them this happy since their mother left." He nodded, settling next to her on the couch, close enough that she could smell his perfume, feel the warmth radiating from his body. Rachel left 3 years ago. She said that motherhood was not what she expected, that boys were too demanding, too emotional. She wanted the idea of a family, not reality. "I'm sorry," Hannah said softly. "That must have been devastating." "For them, yes. For me." He paused, swirling the wine in the glass. "I was relieved. The marriage was over long before she left, but to see my children blame themselves for their mother's abandonment, it almost destroyed me." "They don't blame each other anymore," Hannah noted. "They're just cautious about letting people in." "Like their father," Ji-hoon said quietly, his eyes meeting hers. "Until recently." The air between them crackled with unspoken tension. Hannah was very aware of how close they were sitting, of how his gaze kept falling to her lips, of how her own body responded to his closeness. "Ji-hoon," she began, but he shook his head. "I know this is complicated," he said. "I know we barely know each other, and I know my children are already more attached to you than would probably be sensible, but I can't pretend I don't feel something when I'm with you, something I hadn't felt in years." "What do you feel?" she whispered. "Hope," he said simply. "Like we could be the family they dream of. Like I could be the man you deserve." Before she could answer, he leaned closer, bringing his hand to her cheek. "Tell me I'm not imagining this connection between us." "You're not imagining it," she whispered, her heart racing as he approached. Her lips were a few inches apart when a little voice called out from the room, "Daddy, I had a nightmare." They separated as teenagers caught by their parents. Ji-hoon ran his hand through his hair, looking frustrated and amused in equal measure. "I should go," Hannah said, getting up quickly. "It's late, and—" "Hannah," he held her hand, his thumb caressing his knuckles. "This is not over." She nodded, not trusting her own voice. As he grabbed his bag and headed for the door, he heard Ji-hoon comforting Dong-hyun in the room, his voice soft and patient. "This is dangerous," she told herself as she waited for the elevator. "You're falling in love with all of them, the boys, the dad, the dream of being a part of something bigger than yourself." But when the elevator doors closed and she saw her reflection in the polished steel, she saw something she hadn't seen in years. A woman who looked truly happy. Maybe dangerous wasn't always bad. Maybe sometimes it was just what you needed. 2 months after starting the unconventional courtship, Hannah found herself learning more about Korean culture than she had ever imagined. Ji-hoon began to teach small traditions, how to bow properly, the meaning of certain holidays, the art of making real tea. "Your posture is improving," he said with a smile as she practiced formal bowing in his office. The twins laughed off the couch, where they were supposedly doing homework, but were actually watching the class with full attention. "I feel ridiculous," laughed Hannah, straightening up. "Are you sure I need to know that?" "My grandparents are very traditional," Ji-hoon explained, his expression becoming more serious. "When they meet you, and they will want to meet you, showing respect for our customs will mean everything to them." The casual mention of meeting her family made Hannah's stomach churn with nervousness and excitement. They hadn't yet defined what they were to each other, but moments like that made everything seem more and more real. That afternoon, Hannah surprised the boys by showing up at school. "Hannah Angel!" Woo-bin shouted from across the playground, abandoning the soccer game to run to her. "What are you doing here?" "I thought maybe you would like to go to the amusement park you were talking about," she said, smiling at their shocked faces. "Really?" Dong-hyun asked, his voice low, full of admiration. "The one with the spinning horses?" "The right person. But only if your dad says it's okay." Ji-hoon appeared moments later, having been called by the school office. When he saw Hannah with the twins, his expression softened in a way that made his heart race. "You didn't have to," he began. "I wanted to," she interrupted. "They've been talking about it for weeks." 2 hours later, they were at Coney Island, and Hannah discovered that seeing Ji-hoon trying to win stuffed animals in amusement park games was perhaps the most enchanting thing she had ever seen. "You're armed," he murmured, missing the milk bottles for the 4th time. "Dad isn't very good at games," Dong-hyun confided to Hannah, "but he tries very hard." "I see that," Hannah said, trying not to laugh as Ji-hoon's competitive side emerged. "One more time," he declared, handing over another $5. "Or," Hannah suggested gently, "we can just buy stuffed animals from the gift shop." The 2 boys were horrified. "That's cheating!" Woo-bin protested. "Yes," Dong-hyun agreed. "You have to beat them. That's what makes them special." Then another 20 minutes passed, watching Ji-hoon fight carnival games with the determination of a man at war. When he finally got a small stuffed elephant for Dong-hyun, the boy's face lit up as if he had received the greatest treasure in the world. "This is the best day ever," Dong-hyun whispered, holding his prize. "Better than Christmas," Woo-bin agreed, hugging his own hard-won stuffed tiger. As they walked towards the Ferris wheel, Hannah felt Ji-hoon's hand brush against hers. When she looked up, he watched her with an expression of such tenderness that it took her breathless. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for giving it to them, for giving me that." What? A normal family day. I had forgotten what that felt like. The following week, Hannah decided to surprise them with a homemade chocolate cake. She spent hours perfecting the recipe, wanting everything to be perfect. When he reached the frosting with the cake box in his hand, he could hear excited voices coming from within. "Is that her?" Woo-bin's voice echoed through the door. "Is it Hannah Angel?" "Shh!" Dong-hyun told his brother to shut up. "Don't let her know we were waiting by the door." Ji-hoon opened the door with an amused expression. "They've been watching you for an hour," he said quietly. "I brought dessert," Hannah announced, lifting the box. Did you do it yourself? Dong-hyun asked, eyes wide. From scratch, she confirmed. The two boys celebrated and immediately dragged her into the kitchen. As she lit the candles on the cake, she realized that it felt more like home than anywhere she had ever lived. Make a wish, Woo-bin instructed as they gathered around the table. What should I desire? Hannah asked. That you will stay with us forever, Dong-hyun said immediately. That we will always be a family, Woo-bin added. Hannah looked around the table, at two beautiful boys who had won her heart, at a man who had made her believe in love again, and realized that her wish had already been fulfilled. Tell me about them, she said later, sitting next to him on the couch as the twins colored nearby. Harabeoji, my grandfather Jung Kyung-min, built our family's fortune from nothing. He came to America with $10 and a dream. Halmeoni, my grandmother, Seo Kyung-hee, is the heart of our family. She's going to love you, he added, sure to have warmed Hannah's chest. How can you be so sure? Because you make her great-grandchildren happy, because you make me happy. It's everything she's ever wanted for our family. Woo-bin looked up from the coloring book. Are we going to see Harabeoji and Halmeoni soon? Maybe, Ji-hoon said carefully. Would you like that? Only if Hannah Angel comes too, Dong-hyun said firmly. Now we are a family. Families stay together. The simple statement made the two adults freeze. They had been trying to get around the subject for weeks, but hearing it said so bluntly by a 7-year-old made it impossible to ignore. Honey, Hannah began softly, we haven't talked much about... About what? Woo-bin interrupted. You love us. We love you. Daddy loves you. That's what families are. Does Daddy love me? Hannah repeated, eyes flying to Ji-hoon's face. He seemed to want the ground to swallow him whole. Boys, why don't you wash yourselves for dinner? But we want to hear Dad say he loves Hannah Angel, Woo-bin protested. Yes, Dong-hyun agreed. Like in the movies. Tell me, Dad. Go, wash, hands, now. Ji-hoon's voice had enough authority for the two boys to get up from the couch, but not before Woo-bin shouted over his shoulder, He loves you. I understand why he has the same look that Uncle Tae-sik does when he talks about his girlfriend. The mention of Tae-sik made Ji-hoon a little tense. Hannah had noticed the man in the dark suit, who seemed to appear less often lately, but when she asked about him, Ji-hoon simply said that it was security and changed the subject. About what Woo-bin said, Ji-hoon began as soon as they were alone. Which part? Hannah asked, though her heart was pounding. The part of you loving me, or the part of the man who used to follow us? Ji-hoon's jaw twitched. You've noticed that Tae-sik hasn't been around that long. It's kind of hard not to want to. He used to be everywhere, now I barely see him. She studied his face, noticing how he avoided her eyes. Ji-hoon, what are you not telling me? Before he could answer, his cell phone vibrated. He looked at her and his expression darkened. I need to attend. Work. He went into his home office, but Hannah could hear the conversation through the thin walls. He spoke Korean, his voice low and tense. She picked up a few words. Money, date, and what sounded like a name, Park Dae-sung. By the time he returned, his complete demeanor had changed. The relaxed, happy man who had taught her to bend over had disappeared, replaced by someone harder, more reserved. Is everything okay? She asked. It's okay, he said dryly, but seemed to control himself. Sorry. Stress at work. You know how it is. But Hannah didn't know what it was like, because Ji-hoon had never really explained what his job involved beyond Bitcoin investments. The vague answers were beginning to bother her more than she wanted to admit. Maybe I should go, she said, standing up. Let you take care of whatever... No. His hand reached out to hold hers. Please stay for dinner. The boys are waiting for you and I don't want you to leave. The vulnerability in his voice made her resolve crumble. Okay, but Ji-hoon, we need to talk. Have a real conversation. What is this about? About your work? About... I know, he said quietly. Soon. I promise. The dinner was more restrained than usual. The twins chattered as usual, but Ji-hoon looked distracted, checking his phone repeatedly. When it rang during dessert, he apologized again, this time going to the bedroom and closing the door tightly. Daddy's been sad lately, Dong-hyun remarked, pushing the ice cream into the bowl. Even when he smiles. Maybe he needs extra hugs, Woo-bin suggested. Hugs make everything better. Hannah's heart ached for these quick-witted boys who were so attentive to their father's moods. Sometimes adults have complicated problems that hugs can't solve, she said softly. But love can fix anything, Dong-hyun said with absolute certainty. Right? Before Hannah could answer, Ji-hoon returned, his face pale and haggard. I'm sorry, but I need to leave for a while. Business meeting. At 8 o'clock at night? Hannah asked. It's the final meeting. To close some old accounts. He was already heading towards the closet, taking off a dark coat. Hannah, could you stay with the boys? Of course. He stopped in his haste to leave, turning to her with an expression she couldn't decipher. Gratitude, yes, but also something that seemed almost regret. Thank you, he said quietly. For everything. There was something definite about the way he said it that made Hannah's stomach tighten with restlessness. But before she could ask what he meant, he was already gone, leaving her alone with 2 7-year-olds and a growing sense that there was much more to Han Ji-hoon than she seemed. 2 hours later, when the twins were already asleep and she was cleaning the kitchen, Hannah was drawn to Ji-hoon's home office. The door was ajar and she could see papers scattered around his desk. Don't do that, warned your rational mind. Respect his privacy. But her nursing instincts, the same ones that led her to help crying children in a park, screamed that something was wrong. Ji-hoon had been increasingly tense in recent weeks, answering more mysterious calls, disappearing for business meetings at odd hours. She started to push the door but held back. Whatever secrets Ji-hoon hid, she needed to hear them from him, not discover them by snooping. The sound of the front door opening made her walk away from the office. She quickly returned to the room, grabbed a magazine, and tried to look casual. How were they? Ji-hoon asked as he entered, but his voice sounded tense. Perfect angels, he managed to say, though his heart was pounding. They fell easy. He nodded, but didn't really seem to hear her. His attention was focused on his cell phone, which had been vibrating all the time since he entered. Ji-hoon, she began, but stopped. How could she ask about his mysterious behavior without seeming paranoid? What's wrong? He asked, finally looking up. Nothing. I think I should go home. It's getting late. He studied her face for a long moment, and she had the uncomfortable feeling that he saw through her casual attitude. Are you sure you're okay? You seem tense. I could ask you the same thing, she thought, but instead she just nodded. Just tired. As he walked her to the door, the phone rang again. This time he didn't apologize. He just answered right there in the hallway. Park Dae-sung, he said in Korean, and Hannah's blood ran cold. That was the name she had heard him say before. Yes, I understand. It's almost done. He hung up and turned to find her staring at him with wide eyes. Work? She asked quietly. Always, he said. But there was something in her voice, a warning, perhaps, or a request that she not ask any more questions. When the elevator doors closed between them, Hannah saw her reflection again in the polished steel. But this time, instead of a happy woman, she saw someone who looked scared, because she was beginning to realize that the man she was falling in love with, the man whose children called her Mama Angel, might not be who she thought he was. And soon, this perception would change everything. The confrontation took place on a Tuesday afternoon, during what should have been a routine shift at Mount Sinai Hospital. But first, there was the morning that would haunt Hannah's memory. She woke up early that day, excited about a surprise she had planned. After weeks of watching the boys struggle with their father's limited cooking skills, she decided to teach them how to make a real chocolate cake, from scratch, the way their grandmother had taught her. Today is the day, she announced as she arrived at the penthouse, her arms full of cooking utensils. Let's make the most amazing chocolate cake ever. Really? Woo-bin jumped excitedly. Can we lick the spoon? And the bowl? Dong-hyun added hopefully. Of course, laughed Hannah. That's the best part. For the next 2 hours, the kitchen was in chaos. Flour covered all surfaces, chocolate was spread on little faces, and the twins laughed as they took turns mixing the dough. Ji-hoon watched from the door, the silent cell phone for the first time, a soft smile on his face. "You're getting pushed more into yourself than into the bowl," he remarked as Dong-hyun stirred excitedly. "That's how you know you're doing it right," Hannah said, wiping chocolate from the boy's cheek. "My grandmother always said that the messiest cooks make the best food." "Is your grandmother still alive?" Woo-bin asked. "She passed away a few years ago," Hannah said softly, "but I think about her every time I make a whistle. She would have loved you both." "We would have loved her too," Dong-hyun said seriously, "because she taught you how to make us happy." The simple statement made Hannah's throat tighten with emotion. These children had such a capacity for love, a wisdom beyond age. When the cake finally entered the oven, they sat around the kitchen table, the four of them covered in flour and chocolate, waiting for the timer to ring. "This is the best day ever," Woo-bin declared. "Better than Christmas," Dong-hyun agreed. "Better than anything," Ji-hoon said quietly, his eyes meeting Hannah's across the table. When the cake was ready, they gathered around the kitchen table for the tasting ceremony. The cake was perfect, moist, rich, and made with love. "It tastes like happiness," Dong-hyun announced solemnly. "And as family," Woo-bin added. Ji-hoon took a bite and closed his eyes. "It tastes like home," he said quietly. Hannah felt tears sting her eyes. That's what she's been missing all her life, that sense of belonging, of being needed, of being part of something bigger than herself. "I love you," she whispered, not knowing if she was talking to the boys, their father, or all of them. "We love you too, Hannah Angel," the two boys replied in chorus. Ji-hoon reached over the table and held hers. "We all like it," he said simply. That perfect morning seemed like an eternity had passed when, hours later, Hannah was updating the patient's charts and Dr. Kenneth Price approached his station with a worried expression. "Hannah, there's someone here to see you. She says it's about the Han children." Hannah's stomach sank. "What kind of someone?" "Say she's their mother." The word struck like a physical blow. Hannah knew intellectually that Ji-hoon's ex-wife existed, but the woman had been absent for 3 years. Why would she suddenly appear now? "Where is she?" "Conference room B, E. Hannah." "Doctor." Price's voice carried a warning. "She looks upset." The woman waiting in the conference room was not at all what Hannah imagined. Rachel Jung was petite and elegant, with that kind of polished beauty that came from expensive salons and personal trainers. Her designer bag probably cost more than Hannah earned in a month, and her perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the cold calculus in her eyes. "So you're the nurse," Rachel said bluntly, her voice carrying a slight Korean accent despite the Americanized name. "The one who plays house with my family." "I'm Hannah Montana," Hannah replied, keeping her voice professional despite her heart's fast pace. "And I'm not going to play anything. I care about Woo-bin and Dong-hyun." Rachel laughed, a sound like glass breaking. "Take care of them, please. How many months have you known them? I carried them for 9 months each, gave birth, nursed them, and then abandoned them," Hannah interrupted, her protective instincts firing. "They were 4 years old, Rachel, 4. They needed the mother, and you left." "I had my reasons." Rachel snapped, her composure failing a little. "Reasons you couldn't understand." "Try." Rachel studied her for a long moment, then smiled, a cold, predatory expression that made Hannah's skin crawl. "You really don't know, right? About your precious Ji-hoon and your business?" "I know he works with cryptocurrency." "Cryptocurrency," Rachel repeated mockingly. "Is that what he told you?" She took out her cell phone, scrolling through the photos. "Let me show you what your boyfriend really does for a living." The first photo made Hannah's blood run cold. It was Ji-hoon, but not the kind father she knew. This version of him was sitting across from an older Korean man in a clearly private meeting. The older man's face was hard, scarred, and radiated that authority that comes from violence. "That's Park Dae-sung," Rachel said casually, "one of the most powerful crime bosses on the East Coast. And your sweet Ji-hoon? He has been laundering money for the Korean Mafia for more than a decade." "You're lying," Hannah whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. Many things suddenly made sense. The mysterious calls, the security guard who followed them everywhere, Ji-hoon's vague answers about his job. "Am I?" Rachel slid to the next picture, Ji-hoon shaking hands with men who looked like they came out of a crime movie. Do you think I just found these by chance? I have documented his every move over the past 3 years, every meeting, every transaction, every moment of weakness. Why? Hannah managed to say. Because I love my children too much to just disappear, but I also love them too much to come back. Rachel's voice cracked slightly. I've been watching from the shadows, making sure they're safe, documenting everything in case I need to protect them. Hannah felt sick. Even if that's true, it doesn't change how I feel about the boys. The boys? Rachel's voice rose, and several nurses in the hallway turned to look. Do you think you can just come into their lives and replace me? Do you think any poor nurse can give my children what they need? I think I can love them, Hannah said quietly, which is more than you've ever done. Rachel's face contorted with anger. Love? Want to talk about love? Let me tell you what love really means in Ji-hoon's world. It means being a target. It means wondering if every knock on the door is someone coming to hurt your family. It means seeing your children grow up surrounded by violence and lies. She leaned forward, her voice lowering to a venomous whisper. I didn't abandon my children because I stopped loving them. I left because I loved them too much to see them grow up in that world. I was having panic attacks, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't function. I myself was becoming a danger to them. So you just... Did you leave? I've made the hardest decision of my life, Rachel said, tears finally breaking through her composure. I left them with their father and disappeared, hoping that without me there, without my paranoia and fear, they could have a kind of normal childhood. For the first time, Hannah saw genuine pain in the other woman's eyes. Then why are you here now? Rachel's expression hardened again. Because I was watching, waiting, and I see that my ex-husband has found a new toy. A beautiful nurse who thinks she can be a mom without understanding the price. She took more photos, these clearly taken without permission. Hannah and the twins in the park, Hannah leaving Ji-hoon's building, Hannah at the market with the 2 boys, the 3 of them laughing at something Woo-bin said. You've made yourself visible, Rachel continued. You've become a target, and worse, you made my children targets again. That's not, You already did, Rachel said coldly. The moment you started playing house with a criminal's children, you put them in danger. The moment you started to fall in love with their father, it became a weight that his enemies can exploit. What are you asking me to do? Rachel grabbed her bag, preparing to leave. I'm asking you to love them enough to leave, because that's what true love sometimes requires. Sacrifice. She stopped at the door. I will not expose Ji-hoon's business. I will not destroy the lives of my children by making public the crimes of their father. But I'm also not going to stand by and watch another woman put them in the same danger that I've tried so hard to protect them from. What if I don't leave? Rachel's smile was sad, not threatening. Then I will be forced to make very difficult decisions about how to protect my children. And trust me, Hannah, you don't want to see what a mother does when her babies are threatened. With that, she turned and left, leaving Hannah alone in the conference room with her world spinning out of control. For several minutes, Hannah just stood there trying to process what she had learned. Ji-hoon was involved with organized crime, the twins were potentially in danger, and she, the naive, confident Hannah, had gotten right into the middle of it all. The cell phone vibrated with a message from Ji-hoon. Dinner tonight? The boys are asking for her angel mommy. Mother Angel. The nickname that once made his heart race now felt like a weight on his neck. How could she look at those beautiful, innocent children knowing what she now knew? How could she smile and pretend that everything was normal when their father was a criminal? But even as the questions swirled in her mind, she found herself thinking about that morning, Woo-bin's laughter as she licked chocolate off her spoon, the way Dong-hyun whispered that the cake tasted like happiness, how Ji-hoon looked at her as if she was his whole world. They needed her. Perhaps more than ever, if what Rachel said were true. But did she have the right to stay, knowing that her presence could put them in danger? With trembling hands, she typed back, I can't do it tonight. Emergency work. It was the first lie she told Ji-hoon, but when she sent the message, she had a feeling that it wouldn't be the last. Because Rachel was right about one thing. Everything was about to fall apart. And Hannah had no idea how to stop it. 3 days had passed since Hannah's confrontation with Rachel, and she had been avoiding Ji-hoon's calls and texts with increasingly elaborate excuses. Work emergencies, family obligations, a sudden flu, anything to avoid facing him and the twins, while his mind was still spinning on what he had learned. But avoidance could only last so far. "Hannah, what the hell is going on?" Raven cornered her in the hospital break room, her expression a mixture of worry and frustration. "You look like you haven't slept in days. You jump every time your phone rings, and yesterday I caught you crying in the supply closet." "I'm fine," Hannah lied, stirring the coffee with mechanical precision. "Girl, please, you are as beautiful as a burning house." Raven sat down in front of him, lowering her voice. "That's about that man, isn't it? Korean with children." Hannah's carefully constructed composure broke. "What if I told you that the man I'm falling in love with might be a criminal?" "I would ask what kind of criminal we are talking about," Raven said without hesitation. "Tax evasion or murder? Money laundering by the Mafia?" Raven whistled low. "Okay, this is serious. How did you find out?" Hannah told her everything. Rachel's visit, the photos, the accusations about Ji-hoon's business dealings. As she spoke, she saw her best friend's expression getting more and more worried. "So, what are you going to do?" Raven asked when she was done. "I don't know," Hannah admitted. "Part of me wants to run as far and fast as I can. But those boys, Raven, they've been through so much. Their mother has abandoned them, and now if I also disappear, you're going to break their hearts," Raven finished quietly. "But staying can put them in danger. Rachel said my presence makes them targets." "Rachel also abandoned the children for 3 years," Raven pointed out. "Maybe she's not the most reliable source of information about what's best for them." Before Hannah could answer, her phone rang. Ji-hoon's name appeared on the screen, and his stomach tightened with guilt and longing. "Answer," Raven encouraged. "You can't avoid it forever." With trembling fingers, Hannah accepted the call. "Hello? Hannah?" Ji-hoon's voice was tense, desperate. "Thank God. I've been trying to talk to you for days. Are you okay? Are you hurt?" The genuine concern in his voice made his chest hurt. "I'm fine, just busy." "Too busy to see the boys? They're asking you all the time. Dong-hyun hasn't slept all night since you stopped coming here. He keeps having nightmares that you disappeared as his mother." The words struck like physical blows. "Ji-hoon, whatever is wrong, we can fix it," he interrupted, his voice cracking slightly. "Please, just talk to me. The boys need you. I need you." Hannah closed her eyes, fighting back tears. "I can't. Not now." "Why? What happened? Did someone tell you something? Did someone hurt you?" The questions came quickly, and underneath his concern she could hear something else. Fear. Not just fear of losing her, but a deeper, primal fear that made her wonder if he suspected what she had discovered. "I just need some time," he managed to say. "Think." "Time to think about what?" His voice was getting more desperate. "Hannah, please, whatever it is, we can solve it together." "Can we?" The question escaped her before she could stop it. "Can we really solve anything, Ji-hoon? Even if it involves things you haven't told me?" The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that she thought he might have hung up. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "She found you, didn't she, Rachel?" Hannah's breathing failed. "Like you. Because you're the only good thing that's happened to my family in years, and they've been watching us, documenting everything, waiting for the right moment to strike." His voice turned bitter. "What did she tell you?" "The truth, apparently. About your business, about what you actually do for a living." Another long silence, then, "Where are you?" "Ji-hoon." "Where are you, Hannah? We need to have that face-to-face conversation." Against her better judgment, she found herself giving him her address. 20 minutes later, there was a knock on the door of her apartment. When she opened it, Ji-hoon looked like she had aged years in the 3 days since she saw him. Her hair, normally perfect, was messy, her clothes wrinkled, and there were dark circles under her eyes. "The boys are with my sister," he said bluntly. "We need to talk." He walked into her small apartment, and she was struck by how much he looked out of place between her used furniture and discount store decorations. That was the difference between them, not just money, but entire worlds. "Then," he said, turning to her, "what exactly did Rachel tell you? That you launder money for the Korean Mafia? That you've been lying to me about what you do? Being with you puts me and the boys in danger." She crossed her arms, trying to create some barrier between them. "Is any of this true?" Ji-hoon ran his hand through his hair, looking suddenly exhausted. "Yes." The simple confession hit her like a slap. Part of her hoped that he would deny everything, that Rachel was lying or deceived. But the defeated way he said that single word told her everything she needed to know. "Everything?" she whispered. "Almost everything." He approached her small couch, sitting down heavily. "I launder money. I've been there for almost 10 years, and yes, it's a dangerous job that puts everyone around me at risk." "Why?" The question came out like a broken sob. "Why would you choose this life? Why did you expose your children to this?" "Because I had no choice," he said quietly. "When I was 22, fresh out of college and trying to start my own business, I borrowed money from the wrong people. When I couldn't pay fast enough, I was offered an alternative. To use my computer skills to help them move money and they would forgive the debt. And you said yes. I said yes because the alternative was to break my legs or worse. I was young, scared and dumb, and I thought I could hold out for a few months and then leave." He laughed bitterly. "But there is no way to get out. Once inside, you're in for life." Hannah sank into the chair in front of him, trying to process what he was saying. "And Rachel? How does she fit into all of this?" "Rachel knew what I did when she married me. Her father had connections to the same people. That's how we met. She thought she could handle it. She thought the money and the status were worth the risk. But when the boys were born..." He shook his head. "Everything has changed. She became paranoid, convinced that every stranger on the street was a threat. She started having panic attacks. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't function. Then she left." "Then she left," he confirmed, "but not before making it clear that she blamed me for destroying our family, for putting our children in danger, because he was the kind of man she couldn't love anymore." The pain in his voice was so raw that Hannah felt her anger waver. "Ji-hoon, I know what you're thinking," he said, looking at her with eyes full of anguish. "You're thinking you should run away, that you should get as far away from me and my children as possible, and you're probably right." "Am I?" "Yes." The word seemed to have cost everything. "Because I love you, Hannah. I love you more than I've ever loved anyone, and that makes you a target. It leaves you vulnerable to people who would use you to get to me." "What about the boys?" "Boys love you too, more than they ever loved anyone except me. You gave them something I never could, the feeling of having a complete family. But loving you also puts them at risk because now they have something precious that my enemies can take away." Hannah felt tears streaming down her face. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying that maybe Rachel is right. Perhaps the best thing for everyone would be for you to disappear from our lives. Find someone safe and normal who can give you the life you deserve." "What if I don't want security and normalcy?" The words slipped away before she could contain them. Ji-hoon's head suddenly rose, hope shining in his eyes. "What? What if I don't want security and normalcy?" he repeated, his voice getting stronger. "What if I want you and those beautiful boys regardless of the risk?" "Hannah, you don't understand what you're saying, don't I?" She stood up, pacing back and forth to the window. "Do you think I don't know about danger? I grew up in the urban neighborhoods, Ji-hoon. I've seen violence. I've lost people I loved for senseless crimes. I've walked through neighborhoods where every day was a gamble. But I also know that love, true love, is worth fighting for. This is different. Is that so?" She turned to face him. "Or are you just afraid that if you allow yourself to wait for happiness, it will be taken away from you?" The question hung in the air between them as a challenge. Ji-hoon stared at her for a long moment, and she could see the war unfolding on her face, hope fighting fear, love fighting logic. "What are you asking me to do?" he said finally. "I'm asking you to trust me. Trust that I'm strong enough to handle whatever comes. Trust that what we have is worth the risk." What if something happens to you because of me? What if my enemies decide to use you against me? Then let's face it together, she said simply, like family. The words seemed to break something inside him. He stood up abruptly, crossing the room to pull her into his arms. When his lips met hers, it was with a desperation that she spoke of weeks of fear, longing, and regret. "I love you," he whispered against her mouth. "God help me, I love you so much that it terrifies me." "I love you too," she whispered back. "All of you, even the parts that scare me." They embraced in the middle of her small apartment, two people who had found something precious and were determined not to let it go no matter the cost. "There's one more thing," Ji-hoon said quietly, still with his arms around her. "Something I should have told you weeks ago." "What?" "I'm going to leave. I've been working on it for months, even before I met you. Sell everything, cut ties, transfer all my legitimate assets to clean accounts. That's why you've seen less Tae-sik. I've been reducing security as I move away from the organization." Hannah pulled away to look at him. "Are you serious?" "Really? I was going to tell you everything when I was ready, when I could offer you a life that wasn't built on lies." He held her face with his hands. "I want to leave, Hannah. I want to be the man you and my children deserve." "How close are you?" "Very close. Tonight is my last meeting with Park Dae-sung to transfer the last accounts and officially cut all ties. After that, I'm completely free." His expression darkened. "But it's also when I'm going to be most vulnerable, when people might try to stop me from leaving." "Is that what Rachel meant about me making the boys targeted?" "In part, but also—" He hesitated. "Rachel has been documenting everything for 3 years. If I wanted to, I could expose everything, destroy not only me, but potentially put the boys in foster homes. She wouldn't do that to her own children. I don't think she would do that either. But she's desperate, and desperate people make unpredictable choices." Hannah thought about the conversation with Rachel, the pain she saw in the other woman's eyes. "She won't expose you, she's just scared." "How can you be sure?" "Because she loves these boys as much as you do. She just loves them from afar." Hannah held his hands. "But Ji-hoon, if you're really going to get out, if you're really going to be free, so we can make that work. We can be a real family. Are you willing to wait, take the risk?" "I'm willing to fight for what we have," she said firmly. "All of us, together." As they kissed again, they both felt something change. This was no longer just about attraction or even love. It was about choosing to build something together, despite the obstacles. That evening, Ji-hoon left for his last meeting. "I'll be back by midnight," he promised, and then we started our new life. "Be careful," whispered Hannah. "Come back to us." "Always," he said, and she believed it. At 11:47 p.m., her phone rang. "It's done," Ji-hoon said simply. "I'm free, we are free." "And Rachel." She called during the meeting. She will not expose anything. She realized that destroying her children's happiness would not bring her peace. "Come home," Hannah said softly. "Come home to your family. I'm already on my way." They succeeded. They survived everything that tried to keep them apart. Now they could finally be what they were always meant to be, a family, forever and forever. The sound of children's laughter filled the backyard of their modest suburban home, smaller than the Manhattan penthouse, but infinitely warmer. Hannah stood at the kitchen window, watching Ji-hoon chase after 9-year-old Woo-bin and Dong-hyun through the garden, while their 18-month-old daughter, Lily, applauded excitedly from the car seat. "The birthday cake is ready," her grandmother announced. At the age of 87, Grandma Moses insisted on moving to help with the baby and became the twins' beloved great-grandmother. "It smells perfect," Hannah said, without taking her eyes off her husband and children. Today was special, not only because it was the twins' 9th birthday, but because it marked 2 years since that first day in Central Park, when a crying child called her an angel. "Mom!" Woo-bin called from the courtyard. "Come help us. Daddy's getting too old for tag." "Yes, Mom," Dong-hyun added, smiling. "He's breathing like an old man." "I heard that," Ji-hoon protested, taking Dong-hyun in his lap and spinning him around. "Old man, is it me?" Hannah stepped out, baby Lily on her hip. and was immediately knocked down by two 9-year-olds who had grown up but were still her daughters. "We miss you," Wu Bin stated dramatically. "You were gone for a whole 10 minutes. "Families should be together," Dong Hyun agreed seriously, though his eyes sparkled with mischief. "Always. Forever and ever," said Hannah, the family motto that sustained them through the most difficult times. Ji-hoon appeared next to them, wrapping his arms around his waist. "How was I so lucky?" "We were all lucky," she corrected, watching as Grandma Moses took out the birthday cake. Candles lit. As they gathered around the picnic table, Ji-hoon's legitimate tech consulting business had bought this house. This normal life. Hannah thought about Rachel. The woman surprised everyone by contacting her 6 months ago, asking to see the boys. The reunion was hesitant, exciting, but healing. Rachel was in therapy right now, working through her trauma and slowly rebuilding a relationship with her children. She even sent a birthday card this year. "Make a wish," Wu Bin instructed as the twins prepared to blow out the candles. "What should we desire?" Dong Hyun asked. "That we will always be together," Wu Bin said immediately. "That Mom will always sing to us when we have nightmares," Dong Hyun added. "This baby Lily will grow up knowing how much she is loved," Ji-hoon said quietly. "That our family will continue to grow," Hannah whispered, her hand unconsciously going to the still flat belly where their second child was starting to grow. As they blew out the candles together, Hannah looked around the table, at two beautiful boys who taught her what it meant to be a mother, at a man who showed her that love was worth any risk, at a baby who represented her future, at a grandmother who gave them wisdom and warmth. That's what she'd been looking for all her life without knowing it. A family built not on blood or obligation, but on choice, love, on the simple idea that sometimes the best families are the ones you create for yourself. "Forever and ever," she whispered, and felt it with every fiber of her being. Forever and forever.